Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another edition of Take 3. There is so much happening. By the time this goes to broadcast viewers, we may just see lots and lots of things unfold in the Gulf, in this region on the Arabian Sea, because the Americans are flexing all military muscle. The Iranians are saying, bring it on. We're going to give it back to you. But are other nations palpitating? Zaka Jacob with us, Rahul Shivshankar with us. To be or not to be? War. That's the question.
Yeah, to go to or not to go to war. This could well be the most dated Take 3, or it could be the most prescient one, depending on, what happens over the weekend. But look, the drumbeat of war is definitely, resonant across the Strait of Hormuz, across the Persian Gulf, the entire Middle East. It sounds odd when you say, what is the case for going to war? Because I believe, there should never be a case to go to war. But be that aside, the case that's being made to go to war is that what does Trump want? Trump wants Iran to give up its nuclear ambitions. He wants Iran to say that they're not going to enrich anymore and they're going to turn in their ballistic missiles. No country will agree to such a deal, right? Especially after what's happened with Ukraine. And now, in hindsight, everybody's saying, had Ukraine had nuclear weapons, maybe the Russians would not have attacked. It's the ultimate deterrent, as it were. So no country is going to agree to that deal. So short of that deal, how does Trump, extract something out of the Iranians which he can show back to the American people and to the rest of the world as a win? Trump is not someone who gets into this long-winded, Iraq situation that, George Bush got into, or even like the Vietnam War that Nixon got into. He wants quick deals. He is, after all, the master of the art of the deal, right? So either this is a pressure tactic to try and get the Iranians to concede more on this whole nuclear question, or he believes that he's left with no option but a short burst, like we had the 12-day war last time around. But that had a very specific objective. The objective was he wants to take down the nuclear sites, the 3 nuclear sites. Now, you can argue whether he did that fully well or not. That's a separate thing. But at least there was an objective. Here, I think the objective is a little in a bit of a flux. So which is why I think he's still trying to pile the pressure on Iran to try and, all this armada and all of that, much like what he did with Maduro. But of course, Venezuela and Iran are not the
Maduro,
same.
they're not the same. And the deployment there was not as much as the deployment here. The readiness here, Rahul, 1/3 of the American naval fleet being moved. He is ready to leave certain other areas open and also rallying up all the air bases all around. There clearly is, this is beyond braggadocio. This is beyond just flexing muscle.
No. I think it's both flexing muscle, but in a very hypocritical way. I mean, there are 3 or 4 things that I want to point out here. Number one is the belief that somehow Iranians can't responsibly handle nuclear weapons. There is an apartheid in this world. We faced it. We face sanctions as if brown people are somehow more nuclear trigger happy. You have an Islamic bomb already, and it sits just across our border in Pakistan, right? Has Trump ever gone in there and said, look, let's have a look at your nuclear arsenal. Let's look at what's under your bonnet. Give us control of all these weapon systems. Or we confiscate because you're a threat to Israel, or you're a threat to our interests in the Gulf. And we're talking about a Pakistan today that fights a war against India with Chinese help. I mean, if there is anyone that has a backdoor to China, it is Pakistan. So why hasn't Trump launched an all-out offensive and grabbed the Pakistani nuclear weapons? So that's one. The hypocrisy is so offensive because inbuilt is an element of racism, and secondly, this sort of, that we can do what we want. The second thing flows from that, and this is something that Marco Rubio has said now openly, that America is going to decide who are the bad people that they will target, who in their opinion are the bad people, and we will go out there in the defense of the free West to take out, because we have to save our civilizational ethos from all these various actors who we deem are outliers. right? And then, of course, you have the issue, which is also at the heart of this. What is going to be unleashed? Yes, fine. You know, you might get rid of the Islamic regime. I'm not going to cry buckets over it. I mean, it's a terrible regime. It's oppressive. But look what they did. Look at all the revolutions that were sparked in the Gulf, from North Africa into what is known as Anatolia, and so on and so forth. What happened there? You've had kleptocrats. In one case, you've had a rehabilitated terrorist who's taken over a state. And there is the fear of resurgence of ISIS once again. I'm talking about Syria, and you call that guy a handsome, debonair character. What is going to replace the current regime in Iran? You're going to bring back the Shah. What was the Shah? He was another puppet.
Yeah.
So Mossadegh was, deposed after what was a very free and fair democratic choice exercised by the Iranian people. The CIA didn't like him, they assassinated him, they got rid of him. And that happened in the mid-50s. Since then, you've had the Shah and you've had these mullahs. Between those two, Iran has become a basket case. This is a great civilizational power we are talking about. This is not exactly the kind of state that is a upstart carved out of the remnants of, Persia has a long historical tradition.
There is a historical tradition, but my
you're
question
militating
is,
against.
I agree. So both of you have put two perspectives on. Largely, we believe that America is doing it purely for its own hegemonistic interests. It's also trying to do because it wants to perhaps recapture a certain level of dominance and push back the Chinese surge, if you may say that. But
the world, North Korean dictator,
but
the world is allowing
the world is allowing America to do it, right? Is there a collective that is standing up and saying, hey, you don't have the right to do this?
That's true.
Nobody is doing it. The Russians are still going for a joint naval exercise with the Iranians, but beyond that naval exercise, will the Russians be able to do anything more? They won't be able to. So then if everybody is succumbing and agreeing to this entire world order, where an American comes out
the
and
Russians
says it's
can
got to
go
be
into
American
Ukraine.
AI, the Americans say it's got to be American warfare and American military, and the American says it's the American dollar, and everybody's saying, all right.
Well, according to Trump.
But who is going to go on and take on the Americans? I mean, are the Chinese, Xi Jinping going to come in the defense of Iran? Is Vladimir Putin going to come in the defense of Iran? Who is going to defend Iran? I don't think anybody's going to defend Iran. So this is a geopolitical reality. I mean, it's whether you like it or not. The American military spends, I think, more than the next 30 militaries put together or something like that. Yeah, that's the American defense budget. A great part of their power comes from their military spending and the strength of their military. So here are a couple of differences of opinion that I have. Is the world a better place, a safer place, with Iran not having a nuclear weapon? I absolutely think it is. Is the world less safe if Iran were to tomorrow say that they've made weapons-grade uranium? Yes, I absolutely think certainly the Middle East will be a less safe place. Because what it does is two things. It directly threatens Israel's security.
Yeah.
Israel has never publicly acknowledged that it has nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
The moment Iran gets a bomb or the ability to make a bomb, then Israel will have to come and publicly proclaim that they have nuclear weapons. There's simply no other way. It changes the whole deterrence of the Middle East. And when you have two powers in such close proximity in a region,
everybody else will want it.
What's stopping the Saudis?
Yeah.
They also consider
they're already entering into this partnership with the Pakistanis, saying they're shared nuclear resources.
The Israelis now have a nuclear weapon, so therefore what happens to us? So I think it will lead to a fundamental alteration of the power dynamics in the Middle East, and not in a good way. So to that extent, I'm fine with trying to pressurize Iran to not getting a nuclear weapon. But America had that deal with Iran. It was called the JCPOA in 2015. Obama thrashed it out. They worked out the arrangement. The Chinese backed it. The Russians backed it. The Europeans backed it. It was backed by a multipolarity of countries. It was American-led, and the Iranians agreed. Who pulled out of it? Donald Trump pulled out of it. Why? Because he didn't like it. He didn't like the fact that Obama, sewed up that deal. So the point is, Trump's interests here are very deeply personal and deeply political, because he wants to go down and be remembered as the guy who took out the Ayatollah. That's what he wants to do. What, in the context of Iran, what is he most known for up until now? He's most known for Soleimani.
Yeah.
As he says, I took out Soleimani. Right? That's his claim to fame when it
But
comes
you
to
know,
Iran.
I kind of have a slight problem with us saying, and I know where you're coming from, so I'm not going to take offense at it, but I find it rather strange that we should so blithely say that the world will be a safer place if Iran did not have nuclear weapons. That could be said about America. Could the world be a safer place if the Americans didn't have nuclear weapons, if the Russians didn't, if the Indians didn't, if the Israelis didn't? I mean, nuclear weapons in anyone's hand. North Koreans, for example, Pakistanis, for example, nuclear weapons are a problem. You can argue both ways. You could say that in the Cold War, they kept this sort of static, right, status quo. And it didn't ever turn into a hot war in the way, the Armageddon sort of apocalyptic way many people had sort of suggested it could be. But the point is that, I mean, we are standing in judgment of Iran acquiring nuclear capability. I'm talking about America. When the Americans have gone to war more often against just about anybody on this planet.
And they are the ones who have used the nuclear bomb.
And created the most chaos. I mean, truth be told, they have the blood of 1 million Japanese on their hands. I'm not saying that that was the exact number of people who died, but the repercussions, you know, have dragged on in the way, and we were just reading reports that a large number of Japanese children, even now, who are being born, carry now mutations. So I'm just saying the lingering effects of any nuclear use. In the Iraq war, they used depleted uranium bombs. In Afghanistan, they're supposed to have used them. So I'm just saying that, look, that's just the by kind of sort of sideshow debate that we can have about whether America has the right or not. I fundamentally don't think that America has the right to do this. They should go through the United Nations.
If America doesn't have the right to do,
or they should go through their own Senate.
They don't care for
that the Congress and even the Senate has not approved this, and there are people who are speaking out. And he's supposed to be the guy who's going to be the peace president, the non-war president.
No, but tell me this: in the last year that Trump has been in office, if he attacks Iran again, this would be the 7th time he's attacking another country, militarily attacking another country. So the point is, I mean, he's not the president of peace, although he might want to.
Neither was Obama.
And then Russia and China can tomorrow turn around and say, hey.
Neither was Obama, but he still got the Nobel Peace Prize, despite taking war to so many other more countries. My question is, where is the rest of the world? Why are they not collectively standing here and saying no?
No, but because they can't. I mean, you see, the only way you can do that. Anand, the only way you can do that is if you are ready to challenge the American military on its.
No, you don't need to go to war to work it as a deterrent.
I'm not a Chomsky fan, though I've read a lot of his stuff. But you know, his thesis has always been the military-industrial complex. I mean, it sort of kind of predates him a little bit. We also know where that came from. But the point is, fundamentally, I feel that America needs war because they want to keep spurring arms production. They need an excuse for it because there's a whole bunch of companies that fund a large number of these parties and so on and so forth. So they want to keep exhausting their arsenal, so to speak, so they can build more. And there's a virtuous cycle.
So then there has got to be some place where they can drop their bombs, and then that's exactly what Russia was doing with Ukraine, and America allowed that because they could also replenish their entire military-industrial complex. All right, let's call that game out. But then what happens now? Now, nations that are going to get affected if that Strait of Hormuz is blocked even for 2 weeks. That includes Bharat.
Yes.
That includes China. That includes
all of South Asia. 14-15% of the oil
13% of the oil is coming.
That's a hell of a lot of oil.
So why should we take that pain for something that Trump wants to do? Where is it?
That is the question.
Why should China?
You have to ask the Minister of External Affairs, my friend.
No, the point is, guys, this is the reality of the world that we're living in today. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. Forget about
Suffer
us.
in silence.
Today, I don't think even the Chinese, Xi Jinping will not want to militarily challenge the Americans. He doesn't. He might in the Taiwan Straits, because that's existential, that's fundamental to China and to his own legacy and so on. But he's not going to send, the Chinese aircraft carrier all the way to the Strait of Hormuz to defend Iran.
If Xi Jinping suddenly starts taking aggressive action against Taiwan and moving his fleets towards Taiwan, you think America will not be forced to pull back its fleets here and then de-escalate here? There are different ways of getting.
With Trump, you never know. I mean, frankly, he's not said anything. In fact, the big story in Taiwan right now is Trump is holding back this massive weapons package.
Yeah.
In fact, I think reporters asked him this week on Air Force One, and he said, "I'll speak to Xi Jinping and then I'll decide what to do." Why should Xi Jinping decide what the Americans are selling to Taiwan? So I don't. In Trump's case, I don't know if he will commit American military if China would.
Now the same thing. Now, if let's say the end game for Trump is that he wants the Ayatollahs gone. He wants the Khamenei regime to go. He wants there to be a pliant regime there, or perhaps a more liberal, hardline entity there. How does that affect the entire Gulf? How do the Arab nations look at something like that?
How will Pakistan look at it? Pakistan has one of the longest contiguous borders with Iran.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a spillover, and I'm just hoping it'll be nice and massive, into Balochistan. So it's an entrepot. There are a large number of individuals, terrorist groups, as you call them, or rebels, who are actually sheltered in Iran and vice versa.
Yeah.
So the Pakistanis also have their own people because there's a greater Balochistan struggle and so on and so forth. So that area is going to feel a lot of the heat. There's going to be a lot of instability. So Pakistan will have reasons to worry beyond economic. Remember also that there's a lot of trade that goes on between Pakistan and Iran. A lot of the stuff that comes through the Gulf, etc., also passes through. But there's one big advantage.
The drug routes, smuggling routes also pass through that area. Yeah.
But there's one advantage for us. We hope that if an American-enabled government does come through, maybe, just maybe, and the Americans are not proprietor, we might be able to continue our association with Chabahar because maybe the Americans would want to checkmate Gwadar and the Chinese connection. There could be that. Secondly, there's strategic depth than you have against the Chinese who have opened that port.
Yeah.
And that is an interesting game to sort of, theorize.
Yeah, and then
that could be interesting.
Does America then become a little less pliant with Pakistan to guard this area because Iran is a
it's
base
a frontier state for the Balkans.
Yeah.
It's got great, as I said, strategic depth.
I've also maintained that the Pakistanis and the Iranians have a very complicated relationship.
Yeah, they do.
Right? There is A, the Shia-Sunni divide, and B, more than that, because of this Baloch issue that Rahul was talking about, there's a lot of tension from time to time. You see that. There is talk. Again, it's social media chatter. I wouldn't give it too much credence.
But I'll bring it onto the table.
Not to give it any legitimacy. But this is what it is. It is social media chatter. That Munir is apparently offering to hit Iran from the Pakistani side. Now, if that happens, I'm not saying it will. I'm not even saying it's credible.
The first time that the Pakistanis would allow their strategic assets like airfields, etc., to be used in the Gulf context, I think in Kuwait or one of these places.
Well,
or
in
Iraq.
the Gulf context, probably, but Afghanistan, of course.
I'm talking about the Gulf context. Wasn't there some areas that were allowed where the Americans could refuel and this, that, the other?
3 air bases. No, one is Bolari, that is there. The other one is Bagram, and then this Shukur air base. So these are the 3 air bases which the Pakistanis may want to. And that's why perhaps the Americans speed dialed the Pakistanis and asked them to back off during Op Sindoor because these were the bases that were next on line.
Maybe. Also,
Bolari got damaged anyways.
Then there is this whole situation about this board of peace, and the Pakistanis are part of the board of peace, and this is holding about committing Pakistani troops and all of that.
Well, they've kind of ruled out now that they won't be going into Gaza and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but they want to do some peacekeeping sort of a thing. They're not there in active combat.
They will be guns for hire because they can't afford $1 billion anyway to try and get on the.
I think it's $5 billion.
Get onto that.
So the thing is, look, fundamentally, I think if the choice were to not go to war and yet get what he wants. Again, I don't think Trump's objective is to change the regime. He might not like the Ayatollah, but look at what he did in Venezuela. It's not like he changed the regime. He just got a deal with the number 2.
Yeah.
Right? He made the vice president the president.
Here the IRGC and the Ayatollahs hold on the Iranian economy, and the say is too high, too strong, and the equations are very different from
No, but
Maduro and
depends
Venezuela.
on who
It's
he
not the same.
It depends on who he cuts a deal
It's
with.
not
Quite
the
a
same.
sophisticated system.
Yeah,
Of course, that it is.
It's not the
And
same.
that it is.
And see, the point is, he wants Hamas gone, he wants Hezbollah gone, he wants the Houthis gone, because it's all in that interest for the IMEC plus
Yeah,
the Gaza
Israel, yeah.
and the Gaza
No, but
business model and Israel.
Think of it this way, right?
Yeah.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is 86 years old. He's not going to get younger, right? He's not going to be around for
No,
too,
but the
too
Khamenei
much.
family, and he will announce the next religious head. Whoever is the next religious head becomes the next Ayatollah. And see, and that's that religious. He's not just the political head; he's also the religious head. And that family, along with loyalty with the IRGC, they also control about 2/3 of the
No,
economy,
let's see.
the oil, the ports. They've got their
I have a
fingers
feeling
dug
that
in all these
if
places.
it is
Can it
left
be
up to
done
Trump,
without boots on the ground? That's the fundamental
he's not
question.
going. Trump is one thing that you can be
He won't
rest
enter
assured about Trump is he's not going to put American boots anywhere.
So you
even
probably,
in
so let's
Maduro's
game
case, it
this.
was just an
So
operation.
do you think it's going to be more again aerial directed
Aerial,
fire,
yeah.
maybe off the coast, or
yeah.
using aircrafts from long
The Alu
distance?
there, then all of these
Yeah.
areas, the air
So you'll
bases and
probably
all of
take
that.
out some of their assets on the ground. But
I think it'll
if
be
you don't get in there,
Yeah, I think it'll be nuclear sites. It'll be ballistic missile depots.
They will also.
This
they
is
will.
largely-
They will target the bust headquarters.
Yeah.
They will also target the IRGC revolutionaries headquarters because they will want to weaken that force. So somehow I feel
I'm sure that the
it'll be
IRGC would have
fivefold.
sort
See,
of
you
already
know,
game theory.
they would have
and
gamed.
would have taken on.
They
other,
would have gamed, but they also need the money, Rahul. Now, if there is no crude that is going out, there's no money that's coming in, and largely they're selling to the Chinese. They can only buy so much with the yuan, and that too they have to buy from the Chinese only. So there is a money crunch. So, I can't fight a war. Nobody can fight a war with no money there. The other thing is if they stop the ballistics in their silos. See, this gaming and this entire talking about and the Iranians exposing their own positions will have helped the Americans to identify the sites where these silos are. And
in
if they
case
stop
there
them
is
in
a
the silos,
regime
then what happens?
change, and this is the question I think we should
Yeah.
quickly address before we wrap up. If there is a regime change, does India gain? Fundamentally, if it's American-backed new regime that comes in, do you think India gains, or we
I think-
become over-leveraged to
No,
America
I
once
think-
again?
Yeah, I think frankly, aside of all the geopolitics that happened around America and not wanting to import Iranian oil and all that, India's actually had good relations with
That's right.
the Ayatollah.
See, it's
for
not just the
last
Ayatollah.
30,
There
40,
is
50
also
years.
a huge, the
No, so what
second
will
largest,
happen?
the second largest Shia population.
Will we
if
then
I
have to
remember.
supplicate even more to the Americans to say,
I
hey,
would-
give us
No,
an
if I-
opportunity to
no,
rebuild
understand
or
this angle
I
that
think so.
perhaps the
maintain
second.
our. We've invested in the Chabahar port.
Correct me
it's
if
not-
I'm wrong. If the second largest Shia population in the world
That's true.
is in Bharat,
Yes,
okay, and so this Shia connection and Shias largely in Bharat have been very moderate, very peaceful, and very progressive. They have not been at the core of this entire radicalism because it's a Salafi Wahhabi and it's a Sunni thing, Sunni trait. But if there is no internal support for this rebellion, that's the first important part, that there has to be an internal support to the rebellion, and the people would have wanted the Ayatollahs gone or this regime change. You will see a different sect of the Muslims getting radicalized. And that is a threat for us, because if India is seen anyway backing the Americans and working with the Americans openly, Shias closer home may not like that. And that could trigger a certain level of radicalization and a shift
it's possible.
away from the Salafi Wahhabi Devbandi groups
In
into
Kashmir,
the
there is a lot of
Shia, not just
sympathy
even UP and some of the other areas where the Shia may turn around and say, hey, listen, that is something which we will have to also consider as a nation what to be done. But if there are a large number of Shia who believe that no, the Ayatollahs and under this regime there has been a lot of
So what happens
domestic
then? Anand? I mean,
domestic
look,
suppression
it's
or
not
oppression.
as if, look, Iran
Then
has
there's a different
huge
story.
amounts of oil, energy resources, both gas and oil. It has this port that we've had obviously a deep abiding interest
Yeah.
in. Are we going to be cut out, or do we again are at the mercy of America?
We have to see our real politic, how we do it. Because see, I don't think India is also going to back Reza Pahlavi. The Americans don't like Reza Pahlavi.
I don't think it's
I have a
gonna be,
feeling
the Shah's
somewhere it's going to be that the Ayatollahs remain only the religious heads. The political head shifts away from the Ayatollah. There is somebody else from within their rank who emerges maybe from that Mossadegh line or some other line where they say neither the Shah nor the Ayatollah, but this is going to be perhaps a democratically driven Iran. Now, if that's the solution that comes and the moderates back it within Iran, that's a possibility, but we have to see how this unfolds as of
I
now.
wonder if it's even possible.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and watch. But the next week or 10 days is going to be very, very exciting. There's something very exciting coming closer home here also on the next networking stables in the next week or 10 days. And we'll talk about that too. Rising Bharat. We're going to cue that up very, very soon. But for the moment, we're going to wind up. Thank you very, very much, gents. Thank you.